Good afternoon. It is a couple of minutes past 1 o'clock, and we'll now get Concord Annual Town Meeting underway. I'm Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street, Town Moderator, and I see that there are a sufficient number of voters present to permit us to open the meeting, and I do so declare. The meeting is called pursuant to a warrant signed by the Select Board on March 31, 2021. I have inspected the return of service on the warrant and find it to be in order. I declare that the meeting is properly called. The minutes of the meeting will be kept by the town clerk, Kari Tari, who's seated next to me. And I would now like to invite Fire Chief Tom Judge to come to the podium and tell us what we need to know in the unlikely event of an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon. The weather today looks excellent, so it's very unlikely we're going to have to evacuate, but I would like you to keep in mind that if we do, please think of your vehicle as your primary shelter. If that's too far away, the high school is available to us for sheltering, and if you need help evacuating, please raise your voting card and somebody will come and help you. In the event that there's some kind of an emergency that we need to be aware of, please reach out to the closest official and let us know, and we will get some help to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Judge. The Doug White Fields are the venue for the meeting. Voting will take place only on this field unless it proves necessary to open the second field for overflow, which seems unlikely. I should add that the Concord voters who are staffing the voter check-in inside the high school also will be able to vote. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on the Minuteman Media Network as well as on our high school's radio station, WIQH 88.3. And thanks to the diligent efforts of Jason Bulger and Dave Wood and their excellent teams in the IT department and the Light Plants Broadband department, we do have Wi-Fi here today on the field to provide you with internet access. The name of the network is Town Meeting Guest, and no password is required. I want to remind you that at today's meeting, we are still observing certain COVID-19 precautions out of respect and consideration for those among us who remain vulnerable or remain anxious. And we want every Concord voter to feel comfortable participating in town meeting this year. So please, when you're moving through aisles or standing in a line, put your face mask on, but you're free to take them off at your seats and at a microphone. And please keep a reasonable distance in line from people who aren't part of your household. In the restrooms, please wear your mask and remember to wash your hands. And finally, I'll remind you that only plain water is allowed to be consumed here on the field. It's artificial turf and no other types of drinks or food are permitted. So the materials that you need today to participate as a voter in the meeting are your voting slip. You should have one of these. It's beautiful orange. It would have been tucked inside your town meeting materials book. You need that too. And it's a good idea to have your finance committee report. It has lots of useful information, as well as the warrant is printed in full as Appendix 4 in this document, and it has all of the recommendations of the Finance Committee and the Select Board on the articles we will take up today. And finally, there is tucked inside your town meeting materials booklet a little card that looks like this. It is a voter survey, and we have done a lot of things differently this year and last year, and we are going to return to something like normal next year, but I'm very, very interested to know what out of the things that we have done to address the pandemic this year and last year you would like to keep doing. So please fill out these cards and let me know. And there are some specific questions, and then there's an open space on the back for any additional comments that you have that you'd just like us to know about. Thank you. Okay, visitors to the meeting should be seated in the rear corner of the field. We haven't marked it this year, but we would like to have the visitors sit together separate from the other voters so we don't have any confusion in the event we have to count a vote. Ms. Escobedo nominates Ms. Carolyn Flood of 1289 Main Street to serve as the deputy town moderator, who will carry out the duties of the moderator if she is unable to serve. Is there a second? I see that there is. All in favor? Please raise your voting slips. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, the meeting has elected Ms. Flood as deputy moderator, and I do so declare. The deputy town moderator, who is seated to my left, right under the tent on the other side of the Massachusetts state flag, is available for help with any proposed amendments as well as any procedural questions. I have appointed Colleen Giddings of 474 Barrett's Mill Road as assistant moderator in order to take the votes of those registered voters in attendance who are listening to the meeting inside the high school building while they are checking in other voters. I've appointed Mr. Abe Fisher of 400 Hayward Mill Road to be head teller, Mr. David Carr of 82 Losbrook Road to be ballot supervisor, and Richard Wells of 368 Losbrook Road to be assistant ballot supervisor. Mr. Fisher will be supervising vote counting in the event that we need a counted vote, and Mr. Carr will be supervising the ballot counting procedure and vote certification in the event that the meeting votes to use a paper ballot on a motion. Mr. Fisher, are the tellers ready to be sworn? Thank you. That's a great stadium voice, sir. Mr. Carr, are the ballot counters ready to be sworn? Thank you. Tellers and ballot counters, would you all please stand and raise your right hand? Does each of you swear that you will faithfully and impartially perform your respective duties at this town meeting? Thank you. And thank you very much for your service to our town meeting. This afternoon, we have many people to thank, honor, and remember for many contributions, but our streamlined procedures this year are not permitting us to address each of them individually. That does not mean that our gratitude and appreciation are in any way diminished. And town staff, you know who you are, and you know that all of us, especially the moderator, are very grateful to you for yeoman's work in yet another town meeting in pandemic. Once again, you've been first-rate professionals, handled every detail, and found a way to solve every problem. So thank you all. I'm going to ask a few folks to rise so that we may take just a moment to acknowledge them. So would the following people please stand? 2021 Honored Citizen Elise Woodward. Outgoing Select Board member and former chair Jane Hotchkiss. Outgoing school committee member and former chair Heather Bout. Outgoing finance committee member Richard Jameson. Outgoing Finance Committee member Wade Rubenstein. Outgoing Finance Committee member Phil Swain. So a big round of applause and our thanks to all of these people for giving their time and talent to our town. Thank you all. Before we begin the business of this annual town meeting, as has long been our custom, let us stand and hold a moment of silence. This afternoon, we are Concord's legislature. Because we are here not only as private citizens, but also as legislators, We must bear in mind as we cast our votes, not only our own personal interests, but also those of our community as a whole. As we deliberate, let each of us here today maintain an open mind, an open heart, graciousness when we disagree, and a healthy sense of humor, so that the debates of this meeting will not be a source of division among us when our business here is finished. Thank you, and please be seated. I'd like to recognize our newly elected officials who will take office immediately after the conclusion of this annual town meeting. Henry Dane on the Select Board, Linda Escobedo, a second term on the Select Board, Court Booth for the School Committee on for a second term, Tracy Morano, elected to the School Committee, Charles Phillips for the Housing Authority, Stephanie Krobat for the Housing Authority, and Stefan Bader for the Housing Authority. Congratulations to you all. Thank you for serving. And all of you are invited to pause with the town clerk when the meeting is concluded to be sworn in. That goes also for any appointed committee and board members who haven't yet been sworn in. They can feel free to come up and be sworn in by the town clerk when the meeting is concluded. It's our hope and goal to conclude 2021 annual town meeting in this afternoon's session in order to minimize any risk to public health that remains through exposure to COVID-19. And as we did at last year's annual town meeting, we're streamlining our usual traditions and procedures. We have 43 articles on the annual town meeting warrant. 5 articles have no motion under them, and they will be included in an omnibus motion to take no action. 27 articles are proposed to be moved on the consent calendar, and 12 articles will be moved individually for full deliberation. And that may actually be 28 articles on the consent calendar and 11 being moved for full deliberation, but we'll get there. The time limit on questions and comments from the floor this year will be 1 minute. We will start the clock immediately after you have stated your name and address, and I have acknowledged you and invited you to proceed. The clock is here in front of me. This is a runner's clock with a bright LED screen. I know last year it was impossible for people to see the little timers that were at their feet. This one should be visible for everybody, okay? All right. As previously publicized, we won't have presentations on the articles that will be moved individually and fully deliberated, and it's my sincere hope that most, if not all of you, have taken the opportunity to review the pre-meeting hearings and the other materials on these articles that are on the website. There are also in the meeting materials the motions, a narrative explanation of the article, and committee and board recommendations on the articles. And once again, in the Finance Committee report, at Appendix 4, you'll find the full text of the warrant. I will guide you where to look in your materials as we are proceeding through our agenda here today. Any voter who wishes to move an amendment to a motion must do so in writing with 3 copies. And again, the Deputy Town Moderator, Carrie Flood, is here to my left and available to help if you need consultation. I want to point out the locations of our Select Board. They are here to my left. The School Committee are seated immediately behind them. The Finance Committee is over here to my right. And is that the Planning Board back there? Are you guys back there? Yes, the Planning Board is in back of the Finance Committee. Okay. We have some preliminary materials, preliminary motions, rather. This one you won't find in your materials. Ms. Escobedo moves that the reading of the warrant and the return of service thereon be omitted. Is there a second? I see that there is. All those in favor, raise their ballots. Thank you. All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries by a large majority, and I declare that that is a vote. Okay, next we have a provisional motion to adjourn for a public safety emergency. That's on page 10 in your town meeting materials. And Ms. Escobedo moves that upon notification to the moderator by the fire chief that lightning in the area may present a physical danger to the participants, we will adjourn forthwith to resume the meeting on the rain date of Monday, June 14 at 5 p.m. in our current location, the Doug White Fields. Do I have a second? I see that I do. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries nearly unanimously, and I do so declare. Next, we have the omnibus motion to take no action on certain articles. Normally, when we don't have a motion under an article, we just deal with it when we come to the article. I'm grouping them together for efficiency. So, on page 11 of your materials, you'll see this motion. It actually is going to be presented slightly differently. Ms. Escobedo moves to advance for consideration, that is, take them out of order, certain articles on which no affirmative motion is going to be made, and to vote to take no action on those articles. This motion includes 5 articles: Article 1, Article 7, Article 18, Article 42, and Article 43. Article 7 is the personnel bylaw amendment, which the Personnel Board has voted not to move. Article 18 is the acceptance of home rule legislation, on which the state legislature has not yet acted. Article 42 is to raise and appropriate funds for unpaid bills, and there aren't any. Article 43 is to rescind unused borrowing authorization, and there is no need to do that this year. Article 1 is to choose town officers, and we've already done that at the polls. Do I have a second for this motion? Thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? That looks unanimous, and I do so declare. Next, we proceed to the consent calendar. You will find the consent calendar on page 12 of your materials. The consent calendar is a vehicle that allows us to take action expeditiously on a group of articles that the meeting does not feel require full deliberation, and typically that's because the articles are routine, non-controversial, well understood, and broadly supported by the community. And a large degree of the evidence on that comes from the 5 hearings that we have pre-town meeting. So the procedure on this is I will briefly review each article that is on the consent calendar. I will ask anyone who wishes to place a hold on the article we've just covered to raise their voting slip, and then I'll ask if we have 9 others who would also like to place a hold on that article. We're requiring 10 voters to remove an article from the consent calendar. So that's the procedure, and when we get all the way through the brief description of the articles on the consent calendar, we'll have a vote on all those which remain on the calendar. Article 2 is the first article on the consent calendar. It is routine action by the town to simply accept the 2020 annual report. Would anyone like to place a hold on this? Okay, I see none. Article 3 is meeting procedure. This is a routine article that we've had every year for a number of years now, proposed by the Finance Committee, and it is aimed at keeping us in compliance with Proposition 2.5. And you'll see the text of the rule printed in the consent calendar itself. Would anyone like to place a hold on this article? Okay, seeing none. Article 4. Article 4 is an article proposed by the Finance Committee to modify the policy on publication of budget guidelines to align with the current practice of establishing a separate guideline for each budget unit and publication on the town website as opposed to posting it on paper somewhere. And it links the publication date to the scheduled date for the closing of the warrant, an issue which caused us some trouble this year because we moved town meeting to a different date. Would anyone like to, and I should note that the Finance Committee and Select Board both recommend affirmative action on this article. Anyone want to remove this from the consent calendar? Nope. Article 5 is ratifying Personnel Board classification actions. This is recommended for affirmative action by the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and the Personnel Board. You'll see Article 5 printed in the town meeting materials. This is a routine annual ratification of classification actions, and it was a non-controversial adhering. Anyone wish to remove this from the consent calendar? Okay, that's a no. Article 6, classification and compensation plan for regular status positions. This is also recommended for affirmative action by the Finance Committee and the Select Board. Again, this is affirmative action as printed in Article 6 in the warrant. This is this classification and compensation plan is a regular fixture of our annual town meeting warrant, and it was non-controversial adhering. Would anyone like to remove Article 6 from the consent calendar for full discussion? I see no one. Use of free cash, Article 8. Affirmative action is recommended by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and this is an article that would transfer $1 million from the certified free cash balance as of June 30, 2021 for the purpose of reducing the tax burden on all voters. Would anyone like to remove this from the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 11 is an OPEB trust appropriation. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. This is part of retirement obligations that the town has to its former employees. And you'll see the specific numbers are printed in the consent calendar. And this is a routine general fund appropriation. In prior years, this appropriation has been included in the town budget. But it is being separated out on recommendation of the town's auditors and the Department of Revenue to be a separate appropriation by town meeting as a better financial practice. Would anyone like to take this off of the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 12 is the OPEB trust fund expense, and this is also recommended by the Finance Committee and the Select Board. And this is the appropriation of $200,000 just to pay the expenses of the fund. In prior years, this has been paid out of the fund. And again, the recommended better practice is to separately appropriate the money to pay for those fund expenses. Would anyone like to remove this one, Article 12, from the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 14 is the authorization of expenditures under revolving funds pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. Sounds like Harry Potter. Affirmative action is recommended on this one by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and this is a routine authorization of annual spending limits for revolving funds. And these expenditures are made with the approval of the town manager, and they were non-controversial adhering. Would anyone like to remove Article 14 from the consent calendar? No. Article 15 is the establishment of a parking meter fund and the repeal of the parking meter revolving fund bylaw. Affirmative action is recommended by FinCom and the Select Board, and the motion is to take affirmative action on the article as printed in the warrant. This is simply acceptance of a state statute that allows us as a town to maintain the current practice of segregating parking revenue. Would anyone like to remove Article 15 from the consent calendar? Okay. See no one. Article 16 is appropriation of parking meter receipts. Affirmative action recommended by FinCom and the Select Board. This is simply the authorization of expenditures of parking meter receipts that have been received, non-controversial at hearing. Anyone wish to remove Article 16 from the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 18 is not being moved. Article 19 is the appropriation for the senior means-tested property tax exemption. And this is an appropriation of $150,000 from the overlay surplus fund to fund the senior means-tested property tax exemption program for this coming fiscal year. And just a brief explanation there, because the legislature has not yet acted on the senior means-tested property tax exemption, we don't have the ability to continue that program this year unless we separately appropriate funds for it. And the source of this funding that has been proposed is a fund that normally exists for the assessors to adjust tax bills on abatements. And there's enough money in that fund to do both. So that's just a little background information there. But this was non-controversial at hearing, and the program here has been a very popular one over the last 3 years. Would anyone like to remove Article 19 from the consent calendar? Okay, I see no one. Article 20 is light plan expenditures and payment in lieu of taxes. This is a routine enterprise fund action. It's recommended for affirmative action by the Finance Committee and the Select Board. And you can see the motion printed there in the materials and under the consent calendar. Would anyone like to remove Article 20 for discussion? Nope. Article 21, solid waste disposal fund expenditures. This is another routine annual authorization for enterprise funds, and it allows us to spend the user fee proceeds to actually conduct the program. Anyone wish to remove Article 21? I see no one. Article 22, sewer system expenditures. This one recommended by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and again, this is a routine annual enterprise fund authorization, and again, it simply authorizes the expenditure of user fees to fund the services. Anyone wish to remove Article 22? I see no one. Article 23, sewer improvement fund expenditures. This is another routine action. There's the sewer improvement fund is a sub-fund of the sewer fund, and it's funded by fees to connect properties, and this article authorizes expenditures from the fund for construction and expansion of sewer lines and treatment facility capacity. Anyone wish to remove Article 23 from the consent calendar? I see no one who wishes to. Article 24 is water system expenditures. Again, a routine enterprise fund action recommended by the Finance Committee and the Select Board for affirmative action. Would anyone like to remove Article 24 for discussion? I see no one. Article 25. This is an article to authorize expenditures from the PEG Access and Cable-related Fund. And these funds are collected from Comcast, and this article authorizes their expenditure for local public, educational, and governmental access. That's our local public TV channel. Would anyone like to remove Article 25 for full deliberation? I don't see anyone. Article 26 is the Beatty Swim and Fitness Center Enterprise Fund expenditures, again recommended for affirmative action by the Finance Committee and the Select Board. And this one is to take affirmative action as printed in the town meeting materials booklet. And this is another routine annual fund enterprise fund authorization and non-controversial adhering. Would anyone like to remove this one for a fuller discussion? Oh, I see no one. Article 27 is the Minuteman Regional Technical High School District Budget. It's recommended for affirmative action by the Finance Committee and the Select Board. The amount is $1,289,284. This is the assessment that is made by the district to the town of Concord for its share of Minuteman's expenditures. And I should note that pursuant to the regional agreement, there are already a majority of towns in the district that have approved this budget, so it's already a done deal, whatever we do with this. So would anyone like to remove this for a fuller discussion? I see no one. Article 32 is the Historic Districts Map Amendment, recommended for affirmative action by the Select Board and the Historic Districts Commission. And you'll see Article 32 printed in the warrant, and again, that's in the appendix to the Finance Committee report. It adds 2 additional properties at the request of the owners of those properties. And this was non-controversial adhering. Would anyone like to remove Article 32 for a fuller deliberation? I see no one. Article 34 is the Community Preservation Committee appropriation recommendations. Now, this one will handle just a little bit differently from the others. The CPC recommendations include a number of different projects, and they are lettered A through O. So I will proceed briefly through each project, A through O, and ask whether anyone would like to take any one project off of the consent calendar, because we may do that. It's easily split that way if we wish. Okay, so the first project is the Town of Concord Housing Production Plan update for $30,000. Anyone wish to hold that? No. Second one, B, is the Town of Concord Regional Housing Services Plan for $25,000. Any holds? I see none. C is the Concord Housing Development Corporation's Affordable Housing Buy-Down Fund, and the amount recommended there is $233,880. Would anyone like a hold on this? I see none. D is for Southfield Town of Concord Emerson Field Flagpole, and this is a historic preservation item for $14,250. Anyone wish to hold? I see no one. E is historic preservation, $185,000 for the Concord Home for the Aged at 110 Walden Street, and this is the 3rd phase of their preservation project. Anyone wish to place a hold here? No. F is the Masonic Lodge. This is historic preservation, and it's for a replacement and historic structures report. That building is on the town green. The recommended amount is $107,261. Would anyone like to remove this for a full deliberation? I see no one. G is for repair, stabilization, and renovation of the Wright Tavern, which is owned by the trustees of parish donations at First Parish Church. This is historic preservation. And the recommended amount is $260,000. This building also is in the center of town. Anyone wish to place a hold on this? Thank you. I see no one. H is the NRC Chamberlain Park Bridge Survey and Permitting. This is an open space item. $35,000 is recommended. Any hold? I see none. I is the Town of Concord NRC Emerson Conservation Restriction. This is the purchase of a conservation restriction over by the Emerson House. And the recommended amount is $210,000. Would anyone like to remove this for full deliberation? I see no one. J is the Wheeler Harrington House and land, and this is a combination of historic preservation and open space expenditures for a total amount of $20,000. Would anyone like a fuller deliberation of this? I see no one. K is White Pond Beach improvements, and this again is divided between open space and recreation buckets. And the total amount of this appropriation is $300,000. Would anyone like to remove this for a full deliberation? I see no one. L is expenditures for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and this again is a combination of open space and recreation. And the amount is $25,000. Would anyone like to place a hold on this? I don't see anyone. M is Warner's Pond dredging, again divided between open space and recreation. The full amount is $250,000. Would anyone like to place a hold on this project for full deliberation? I see no one. Thank goodness for that breeze. N is expenditures on the old rifle range for survey and permitting. And this is divided again between open space and recreation, and the total amount is $34,500. Any hold for this? I see none. O is $40,000 for staff and technical support, and this is for administration. Any hold on this? Okay, I see none. Article 35. This is a general bylaw amendment. This is for the tree preservation bylaw. These are some small changes that are made in the tree preservation bylaw as the result of a review by an outside expert. It was non-controversial at hearing, and note that the motion is to take affirmative action on Article 35 as printed in the warrant with the deletion of the words and to avoid further infestation of the invasive species, which appears at the end of section 5.5 and A, and that's because no one quite knows how that phrase got into the warrant because it wasn't supposed to be there, so we're eliminating it in the motion. Anyone wish to remove Article 35 for full discussion? So I don't see anyone. Article 36. This is a zoning bylaw amendment, and it is changing definitions and the zoning map and floodplain conservancy. And I should note that on this one and the last one, affirmative action is recommended by the Select Board and also the Planning Board, yes? And also the Planning Board. The motion here is to recommend affirmative action as printed in the warrant. And this is the adoption of the model floodplain bylaw, which is required by the state for all communities that are in the National Flood Insurance Program. So if we want to be in that program, we have to adopt this bylaw. Anyone wish to remove this for a fuller deliberation? Nope. Article 37 is another zoning bylaw amendment. This is for Table 4, minimum parking. Both the Select Board and the Planning Board recommend affirmative action on this article. The motion is to take affirmative action on it as printed in the warrant. It was non-controversial at hearing, and basically what this article does is just continue into post-pandemic times the parking relief that has been given to restaurants who would like to increase their seating to add some outdoor seating. That's been a popular thing during the pandemic. Would anyone like to remove this for full discussion? I see no one. Article 39 is the earth removal bylaw. Again, affirmative action recommended by the Select Board and the Planning Board. And the motion is that affirmative action be taken on the article as printed in the warrant. This amends the zoning bylaw to regulate the filling of earth as well as the removal of earth, since both have similar impacts to the environment. Would anyone like to remove this for full deliberation? You'd like to remove it? Okay. Do we have 10 voters who would like to remove this articles? If there are 10 of you, please put your, okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Could you put your ballot up if, okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we have 10. Okay, so this one we will take off for full deliberation. Okay, so that takes us through the consent calendar. And what we have left on the consent calendar is Articles 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 32, 34, 35, 36, and 37. This requires a 2/3 vote because the consent calendar contains some motions that require a 2/3 vote, so the whole calendar requires a 2/3 vote. So we're ready for a vote. Would all those in favor of taking affirmative action on all of the matters on the consent calendar, please raise your ballots. Thank you very much. Could you put those down? Anybody opposed, please put your ballot up. That is near unanimous, if not unanimous, and I do so declare. You need to say well more than 2/3. Oh, well more than 2/3. Thank you. Yes, near unanimous is also well more than 2/3. Okay, we'll now proceed to the articles that will have full deliberation. And the first one is Article 9. Article 9 has a different motion on it than the one that was printed in your materials, so you will find that different motion tucked in on a separate piece of paper. It provides, Ms. Escobedo moves to transfer from certain line items sums where there was a surplus to other line items where there was a deficit, all of which line items were appropriated under Article 10 of the 2020 annual town meeting for the fiscal year 21 budget. So that's the motion, and you'll see that it is $40,000 from line 1, surplus in general government, $150,000 from line 3, finance, $545,000 from line 6, public safety, $225,000 from line 9, which was the reserve fund, and $85,000 from line 12, which is the group insurance surplus. And those funds together would go to deficits in line 2, which is legal services, line 7, which is public works, and line 13, which is unemployment and workers' compensation. Do we have a second for this motion? I see that we do. And we'll now open the floor for question and comment, and I will remind everyone that there is a 1-minute time limit, and your time will be displayed on this box down here to my left. Microphone number 2.
Can you hear me?
I can. Your name and address, sir.
Brooks Reed, 366 Estabrook Road. I sent
Mr.
an email
Reed.
to you a couple of days ago about an amendment to this motion.
You did. Would you like to move your amendment, Mr. Reed?
I had supplied that to you in the intent that you would read it.
Okay, I will read it for you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed moves to amend the motion under Article 9 to reduce the amount to be transferred from line 6, public safety by $190,000 and to eliminate the transfer of $190,000 to line 2, which is legal services. Here you go. Mr. Reed, you have 3 minutes to speak to your amendment. If you, do we have a second for Mr. Reed's amendment? I see that we do. You have 3 minutes to address your amendment, and Jeremy, can you get that going for us? Thank you.
Before you start the clock, I'd just like to mention that while I'm a defendant in the Estabrook lawsuit, I'd like to make clear that I'm speaking here as a Concord taxpayer who is obligated to fund the lawsuit which the town has filed against me. Now, could you please reset the clock to 3 minutes?
I'm sorry, that was part of your 3 minutes, Mr.
Okay.
Reed. Keep going.
The amendment I have proposed would cut off town council funding. Let me explain why I'm proposing this action. Last year's annual town report town council page contained a false statement about the status of the Estabrook lawsuit. This false statement was brought to the attention of the select board and town manager. It is the job of these individuals to supervise town council in order to prevent distribution of false information to citizens. Despite the town being made aware of these false statements, no public correction was ever issued by the town or its legal counsel. This year's annual report again contains the same false information which was included in last year's town council page. Furthermore, this year's town council page also includes 2 new false statements about the Estabrook lawsuit. Clearly, my efforts last year to have legal counsel's false information corrected was overruled or ignored, and town council has subsequently increased its distribution of false information to Concord citizens. As Concord taxpayers, we are paying huge fees to town council for legal services, amounts which have now exceeded budget by up to 100% for 4 consecutive years. But to have town council respond to these outsized payments by giving us, the citizens, false information about the status of town council's work is truly outrageous. If the town will not control its legal counsel, we as citizens must step in and take control by cutting off funding to town council. Once funding is cut off, the town may choose to inform us of what really is going on with town council. And after that information has been provided to citizens, the select board and town manager may begin to work to restore citizen confidence in their ability to control their legal counsel. At that point, we, the citizens, may decide to begin funding legal services again. Citizens may obtain a copy of the information which I provided to the town about false town council statements by visiting my Facebook page, which is Brooks, middle initial S, Reed, R-E-A-D, or by making a public records request for the document to the select board or town manager. Thank you. And please vote in favor of this amendment to cut off legal services funding until we get real answers as to why town council is providing so much false information to the citizens of Concord.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. The mover of the article was the select board. Would the select board like to respond, or? There was a second for the amendment, yes. Who's going to respond? I'm just going to take a moment to have a response here. Would anyone from the Finance Committee like to respond? Mary, why don't you come up while the Select Board is considering? Yeah, go ahead.
Mary Hartman, 16 Concord Green, Chair of the Finance Committee, speaking on behalf of the Finance Committee.
Proceed.
Thank you. The Finance Committee unanimously voted to recommend no action on this amendment for the following reasons. Article 9 is a way to accurately account for how monies are spent. It is not a referendum on how monies should be spent. The question before us is not, should we pay our legal expenses? We will pay our legal expenses because Concord pays its bills. This amendment will not stop that. If this amendment passes, the town could end the year with a deficit in a budget line item. This could delay certification of free cash. This transfer does not affect the services delivered by public safety. They ended the year with a surplus because they had some of their expenses paid for by the CARES Act. The question before us is, how should we accurately account for those expenses without resulting in a deficit line item? Transferring monies from underspent accounts to accounts that need the money is a straightforward accounting practice. The Finance Committee neither supports nor opposes any of the litigations that the town is involved in. We're agnostic on that. That's not our job. On this point, though, we do recommend that the town approve these transfers so that the fiscal year end, does not have a budget deficit on any of its line items. The Finance Committee unanimously recommends no action on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartman. Ms. Escobedo?
Madam Moderator,
Proceed. Oh, we need your name and address, actually, sorry.
the Select Board has voted unanimously to take no action on this amendment. And I'm going to ask Town Council to address the other issues.
Thank you, Ms. Escobedo. Town Council?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. With your indulgence, Mr. Reed mentioned that he had brought some of these issues in the Town Council report to the attention of the Town Manager, the Select Board, and the Finance Committee. There's a copy of that letter, so I'd like to just read from it so that we all know what we're talking about. And I won't read every word, so apologies to Mr. Reed. I'm just going to read the 3 misstatements that he alluded to. 1, the Town Council page states that the Town of Concord versus Neil E. Rasmussen et al., quote, the town had settled with Harvard and the Baker-Nielsen's, end quote. However, this is back to Mr. Reed's words, in a letter to the judge in this case, Counsel Melissa Allison, my partner, indicates the town did not settle with the Baker-Nielsen's, writing, quote, the Baker-Nielsen situation is different from Harvard's. The dismissal of the Baker-Nielsen's was not based on a settlement agreement between them and the town. Both of those, and then it goes on to say, these 2 statements cannot both be true, and I understand from my research that it's the second statement that is true. Please direct Town Council, inform the public that the Baker-Nielsen's did not reach a settlement with the town, as incorrectly stated in the town report. This was a subject of coverage by the Concord Journal. This is now me speaking for a second as Town Council. This was a subject of coverage by the Concord Journal last summer. Both statements are in fact true. There was no settlement agreement with the Baker-Nielsen's, but there was a stipulation to dismiss them from the case. And so they were dismissed by agreement. There was not a formal settlement agreement as there was with Harvard. Second point, the Town Council page states that for Town Council versus Neil E. Rasmussen et al., quote, Harvard chose to re-enter the case and participate in trial because its rights might be affected by the court's ruling, end quote. Mr. Reed goes on to say, however, the online court docket for the lawsuit states that Harvard was, quote, ordered to re-enter the lawsuit by the court. He then has an image from the court's website, and it goes on to say, the Town Council page describing this as, quote, Harvard chose to re-enter the case, quote, is plainly not the same as Harvard being, capital letters, ordered to rejoin the case. Please have Town Council inform the public prior to the Article 9 vote that Harvard did not, quote, choose, end quote, to re-enter the case, but rather was, capital letters, ordered to enter the case by the court as stated in the docket. Again, this one's a little bit more complicated, but Harvard and the town did settle. In the course of the, I believe I'm out of time, Madam Moderator. Should I continue?
You are at time, but if you could just wrap it up in 30 seconds.
I'll just go over the last 2 very briefly. Harvard was not ordered back into the case. Harvard was advised by the court due to further proceedings after the preliminary injunction motion that the town needed to file to reopen the trail last summer after it was closed by certain of the defendants, that if Harvard that the court would be making factual findings in the case. And while the town was not seeking a judgment against Harvard, those factual findings, the court explained, could affect Harvard's rights. If it chose to be there to protect itself with those factual findings, it should come back into the case. Harvard decided to do that. The Baker-Nielsens were given the same opportunity and declined to do so. The last point, which I won't read, Mr. Reed takes issue with our characterization of, I believe the word was, minimizing litigation costs, and I believe in a different place we said to streamline discovery and trial. Anyone who's been involved with discovery or trial knows that the way to minimize litigation costs is to streamline discovery and trial. So that's a bit of a, there's no distinction really between the two. Those are the three issues in the report. And just for further information, the trial ended this past Thursday for everything except the closing arguments, which will take place sometime in the late summer, early fall. Thank you, and I apologize for the extended time.
Thank you, Mr. Markarias. All right, I let Mr. Markarias run over a little bit there, but I know he's answering questions that we were otherwise certain to have. Are there questions or comments on the amendment? If so, please come to an amendment. Yes, and that is microphone number 1.
I'm William Beckleen from 254 Fairhaven Road in Concord.
Mr. Begley?
I support this amendment. I object to the way the Estabrook lawsuit is being funded. I'm for transparency in government, and there's no transparency in this. In the 5 years preceding the start of this lawsuit, they came in $37,000 under budget. In the 5 years subsequently, we spent almost $1.2 million on the lawsuit. Would we have proceeded with this lawsuit when the original budget was $1.5 million? I don't think so. So I want transparency. Every town meeting in the last 4 years, the finance committee, not the finance committee, the town has come to the budget and the town meeting and asked for more money because the legal services overran the budget. And they're going to do it again and again until someone forces them to put a real number in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1 again.
Hi, Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road.
Ms. Galis.
Thanks. What I would appreciate is a chance for Mr. Reed to respond, especially since Town Council had extra time, and I know he might have things to say to some of the things that Town Council explained. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Galis, I think you asked for Mr. Reed to have an opportunity to respond. Is that what you asked?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Reed, if you do want to respond, come on up to a microphone. Microphone number 2.
Gregor McGregor, 70 Williams Road, Madam Moderator.
Mr. McGregor.
I urge a yes vote on this amendment and, if necessary, a no vote on the article. I was a young man when this lawsuit began. It strikes me that here at this town meeting, we're enjoying deja vu all over again. This is worthy of a long-term series on public television. Now, I was involved representing some of the defendant neighbors in the very first phase of this lawsuit. I will describe that as Chapter 1, Book 1, Folio 1 of this saga. All these things that have come to pass could have been seen by the then Select Board when they improvidently jumped into court and began spending this amount of money. They chose to sue on 2 grounds and dropped one quickly as being unwinnable. They filed the suit while a settlement offer was pending. They walked away from mediation by a retired land court judge, and they've been back to town meeting ever since with an unclear strategy. I say that as a taxpayer, not as a lawyer.
Mr.
and not
McGregor,
involved.
you're actually
You're
a bit over time. Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Brooks Reed, 366 Estabrook Road.
Mr. Reed.
To address Mr. Macarius's comments, I'm going to read from the Harvard Settlement Agreement. It says, Following Harvard's dismissal from the Estabrook Trail litigation, the town shall cease and desist from requesting or pursuing in the Estabrook Trail litigation any ruling, decision, judgment, or judicial relief of any kind that would concern, affect, or apply to any land owned by Harvard, including, without limitation, any Harvard-owned parts of the Estabrook Trail in Concord. During the preliminary injunction hearing we had before the court, Town Council stated that they wished to have a ruling over the entire length of the Estabrook Trail, which includes Harvard's land. We squealed on the town, and Harvard was most upset, came back, and was subsequently ordered back into the case. Those are the facts.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Microphone number 2.
Paul Jameson, 419 College Road.
Mr. Jamieson.
I would like to say that it is very important that the town win this suit, and I think we should spend whatever is necessary. And I would also like to point out that Mr. Reed is one of the major causes of all of these expenses. He simply wants to reduce the legal funds available to challenge him. I mean, this is an incredible position for a defendant to be complaining about the legal cost. I think it's terrible and ridiculous. But I also want to mention that I believe it's very important for the character of the town and reputation that we, as the, quote, poor residents of Concord, are able to walk on a trail and that that is conveniently located. It is very important for the sense of freedom in the town. And if we were to lose the suit, the whole character of the town would decline, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Jamieson. Microphone number 1.
Susan Winter, 128 Nimrod Drive. I've lived in Concord since 1972. In 1991, another controversy arose over general public access to another discontinued private road. Like Estabrook Road, this road had become a popular destination that became unsustainable for the residents who lived on and legally owned the road. In 1992, public access was restricted to this road. Certain citizens urged the town to take legal action against the property owners. Legal counsel for the town at the time was consulted by the town manager. The result was the town took no action against the landowners, and legal counsel stated, quote, "Access to this road is a private property issue to be determined by the landowners. Quote, my job as legal counsel is to keep the town out of expensive and unnecessary litigation. Sadly, our present legal counsel clearly holds the opposite view. Tragically, their lawsuit will go down in history as the most divisive and expensive legal action commenced. I please vote no on the transfer and yes on the amendment."
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Parashar Patel, 397 Sudbury. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf.
Mr. Patel.
I guess 2 points, or 1 point and 1 question. 1 point is you've had opportunities to vote out members of the select board over multiple years if you didn't like their policies. I'm not sure this is the place to litigate the lawsuit or the strategy. And then a question for those that support Mr. Reed's amendment. I think it's been clearly stated by Mary what the consequences are of not voting for the entire amendment and transferring the funds, but I haven't heard any solutions of what they would offer instead. Because at the end of the day, there are certain rules that we have to have around the accounting of these funds. I haven't heard any solution as to what they would do to address that underlying issue if this amendment goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Microphone number 1.
Denise Hartz, 124 Williams Road.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The cost to taxpayers will potentially not end with the Estabrook $1.5 million and counting lawsuit. 5 Concord roads were legally discontinued under the same law from 1929 to 1981. The town of Concord petitioned for each one of these road discontinuances, and roads legally reverted to private property. There are hundreds of residents and multiple businesses in Concord who will be affected by the outcome of this lawsuit if the town prevails. The private property they own and title will suddenly have a public easement through it. Thanks to the unintended consequences and the unprecedented actions of this lawsuit, our town could be subject to additional multi-million-dollar lawsuits and appeals by affected residents of these other roads. It is time for citizens to block the legal blank check and hold our vendors accountable for their budgeting. Please vote yes on the amendment and no for the transfer. Thank you.
Microphone number 3.
David Allen, 316 Heathbridge Road.
Mr. Allen.
Ms. Moderator, the point was raised that Mr. Reed has an oar on this boat. Let's also notice that Town Council, who has received $1.2 million, also has an oar on this boat. We've got a sticky wicket here. We got to pay our bills, and yet we have at stake telling the truth. As we've seen through 4 years on the national stage, that makes a difference. I think we can send a message here, voting yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
Catherine Angel, 267 Main Street.
Ms.
I
Angel?
urge a no vote on this amendment. The amendment, as the Finance Committee stated, is not about the substance and arguments of the lawsuit. It is about how the town pays its bills, and we should stick to that. This is also not the place to litigate the lawsuit. Both parties, or all parties, have been paying for lawyers to do that. There is transparency. There were 6 days of court hearings that were available online for anyone to see. Some of the costs that have been incurred, as others have said, have actually been driven by actions of the defendants, such as closing the trail so that the town had to seek a preliminary injunction so that those of us in the town could still access Estabrook Woods under the area that's in dispute. And the judge ended his trial by saying he hoped the parties will enter into discussion for settlement that recognizes private property rights and public access. So let's stick to the finance, accounting, and then let the court settle it.
Thank you, Ms. Angel. Microphone number 1.
Joan Campbell, 254 Fairhaven Road.
Ms. Campbell.
There are already 7 legal entrances to Estabrook Woods. Why does the town need to try to take private land rights and spend over $1.5 million to gain one more access? Who besides the lawyers are truly benefiting from this continual unbudgeted expenditure? I recommend voting yes on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Rainer Bucas, 1360 Monument Street.
Mr. Bucas.
My white hair will testify that I've been to a bunch of town meetings, and it has been repeatedly the sense of the meeting that the town should desist from suing its citizens. We now spend $1.5 million. Each time we say no at the town meeting, the select board seems to go to another budget and find it and carry it on. Those who take the advice of their lawyers will always have lawsuits. Thank you.
Microphone number 1.
Sue Felshen, 19 Sunnyside Lane.
Ms. Felshen.
Madam Moderator, I call the question.
All right, this is non-debatable and requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? And the motion to call the question carries by well more than 2/3, and we will proceed to a vote on the amendment. The amendment requires a majority vote. All those in favor of Mr. Reed's amendment, which is to reduce the amount to be transferred from line 6, public safety, by $190,000, and to eliminate the transfer of $190,000 to fund the deficit in line 2, legal services. That's the motion. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. All those opposed? Okay, the motion fails by a clear majority, and I do so declare. We will now return to the main motion under Article 9. And we see the transfers in the loose sheet that was tucked in. It's $40,000 from general government, $150 from finance, $545,286 from line 6, public safety, $225,000 from line 9, which was the reserve fund, and $85,000 from line 12, which is group insurance. And those surpluses all go to fund deficits in the following lines: $190,000 in legal services, $770,286 in public works, line 7, and $85,000 in line 13, unemployment and workers' compensation. Are there any more comments and or questions on the main motion under Article 9? Seeing none, it appears that we're ready to proceed to a vote on Article 9. All those in favor, please raise their ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? The motion carries by a clear majority, and I do so declare. We'll now proceed to Article 10. And you'll see the motion on page 29 in your materials. I'm not going to read it because it's quite lengthy, but this is the full amount of the town budget. It does, the total appropriation is $48,779,887. A two-thirds vote is required here because there is a transfer from a stabilization fund involved in this budget article, and that does require a two-thirds vote. Do I have a second for this motion? I see that I do. And we'll now open the floor to questions and comments on Article 10, the town budget. If you have a question or a comment, come to a microphone. Seeing none, it appears we're prepared for a vote on the town budget. And again, this... Wait, there's someone. I'm sorry, where is someone? Over there. Okay, microphone number 1.
William Beckleen, 254 Fairhaven Road.
Yes, sir.
Why should we believe the budget line item for legal services when for the last 5 years it has been exceeded every single year in total by like 85%? Why should we even believe the number?
Sir, is that a rhetorical question, or would you like me to find someone to try and answer that for you?
I'd like someone to give us an answer. Is it a projection? Is it a guess? Do they think the lawsuit will be settled? Why? How'd they come up with the number?
Thank you very much. Who would like to respond to that? Mr. Town Manager.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. The short answer is the trial, which has been a significant driver of legal expenses, has now ended. We have increased the legal services budget in each of the last 2 budgets because of the expenditure trend line. And I guess I do want to point out that there are legal expenses that have gone up for the town beyond just the litigation. And so we have increased each year, but largely unforeseen circumstances have continued to drive costs up. And we're hoping with the trial concluded, we will be back on track where there was a long history of it being under the line item. We hope to get back to that.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Any more questions or comments on Article 10? Okay, seeing none, it looks like we are prepared to go to a vote. We need a two-thirds vote on this article. All those in favor of affirmative action on Article 10, the town budget, raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed, please raise your ballots. Okay, that vote carries by well more than two-thirds, nearly unanimous, and I do so declare. We will now move on to Article 13. Okay, this is the capital improvement and debt plan, and again, this requires a two-thirds vote, and you will find this on page 34 of the town meeting materials, and it's lengthy. I invite you to peruse it. It was explored fully at the town meeting hearings. Do I have a second for this motion? I see that I do. Okay, we'll open the floor for questions and comments on the capital improvement and debt plan for the town under Article 13. Any questions or comments, please come to a microphone. All right, I see none. I think we're prepared to move to a vote. We need a 2/3 vote on this. All those in favor, please raise your ballot slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously, I think. I didn't see anyone opposed, certainly by well more than 2/3, and I do so declare. All right, we'll now move to Article 17. This one is to appropriate funds for affordable housing development from the certified free cash balance of June 30, 2021, in the amount of $500,000. This is for the purpose of developing affordable housing. Now, the Select Board has unanimously recommended affirmative action on this article, and the Finance Committee has recommended no action. And you will find both of their recommendations printed after the article on page 40. It starts on 39 actually and goes to page 40 in the town meeting materials. Do we have a second for the motion under Article 17? I see that we do. And we'll now open the floor for questions and comments on Article 17. Microphone number 2.
Rich Feely. Is this two?
Yep, that's you.
Rich Feely, 347 Lexington Road,
Yes, sir.
President of the Concord Housing Foundation. I urge passage of this amendment. Just since the Finance Committee recommended not passing this use of free cash, another affordable unit has been bought down so that the remainder from the previous years is down to around $250,000. Just the little house we're building on the corner of the Giroux land will cost about $400,000. That is appropriated. But if we want to move forward with any other acquisitions to keep people who work in this town living in this town, we have to have this money every year. We're moving forward in the legislature. More towns are passing this, but it's going to take another year or 2 years before we have approval. I just remind you, when you go to buy a house, you don't wait till you find the house to save the down payment. So I urge approval.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Lee Smith, 1836 Main Street.
Mr. Smith.
Madam Moderator, I'm the chair of the Concord Housing Development Corporation, CHDC. Our board voted unanimously to support Article 17. In 2019 and 2020, town meeting appropriated $500,000 in free cash. That $1 million appropriation has been extremely successful in that it's enabled the town to create and preserve 5 affordable housing units within the town. Without that funding available, opportunities to continue to create and maintain and increase the stock could be lost. We urge your support on 17. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Keith Bergman, 56 White Avenue.
Mr. Bergman.
Thanks, Madam Moderator. I was chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Study Committee, and I've recently been appointed by the Select Board to the Municipal Affordable Housing Board of Trustees. But I'm speaking on my own behalf since the former committee no longer exists and the new one has not yet been seated. Nevertheless, I'm very grateful for the affirmative actions by the last 2 town meetings, which it's very important for us to continue at this town meeting. Our Affordable Housing Trust needs this funding as so that we can be the group that can act quickly when opportunities arise and we appreciate the support of the voters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no one else at a microphone, it looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote on Article 17. This one is a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 17, appropriating $500,000 from free cash to affordable housing, raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? And that carries by a clear majority, and I do so declare. We'll now move on to Article 28, which is the Concord Public Schools budget. The total amount of this appropriation is $41,708,424. The Finance Committee and the Select Board both recommend affirmative action. It is, the budget request is within the Finance Committee's recommended guideline. Do we have a second for this motion under Article 28? I see that we do. And we'll open the floor to questions and comments on Article 28. I don't see any questions or comments on Article 28. Looks like we're ready to move to a vote on Article 28. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the appropriation for Concord Public Schools, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All those opposed? That looks like a unanimous vote, certainly well more than a majority, and I do so declare. We'll now move on to Article 29, which is the Concord Public Schools capital budget. This is a $900,000 appropriation, and it requires a 2/3 vote because there is borrowing involved. Both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 29. Do we have a second for the motion? I see that we do. And we'll open the floor now for questions or comments on the public schools capital budget. Seeing none, we will proceed to a vote. And again, this is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of this $900,000 appropriation for the Concord Public Schools capital budget, raise your ballots. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your ballots. That is another unanimous, oh, no, are you opposed? You're opposed, okay. So near unanimous, but certainly more than 2/3, and I do so declare. All right, we'll now move to Article 30, which is the Concord Carlisle Regional High School assessment for the town of Concord. The appropriated sum for Concord is $24,608,739. And again, yes? We have a different number. Yes, would you like to move this differently rather than amending the motion? Why don't we just change the main motion? You come on up here.
Thank you very much. Heather Bout, 52 Simon Willard Road, speaking on behalf of the school committee.
Proceed, Ms. Bout.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The school committee would like to move, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $24,376,779 as the town's apportioned share of the Concord Carlisle Regional School District budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022, and that the same be expended only for such purposes and under the direction of the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee. I will note that this is a lower number than was expected, so we're very happy to bring this number, and Dr. Hunter's going to give us a little more background on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. As you can imagine, it's been an extraordinary year in the schools. We were very grateful in September to be really well supported by this body with all the unknowns ahead of us. As a result of our careful work and unknowns becoming knowns and the benefit of the CARES Act, we're able to recommend to the school committee, which was approved a couple of weeks ago, a reduction based on the surplus in FY21, a reduction in the assessment of FY22 of $300,000, which is combined across Concord and Carlisle. Concord's share of that is $231,960, which is why you are hearing a reduced number this afternoon. So with great gratitude, we appreciate all the support we've had. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Do we have a second for this reduced number motion? I see that we do. We'll open the floor for questions and comments on the Concord Carlisle Regional High School budget. Seeing none, it appears that we are ready to proceed to a vote. This is a majority vote. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? That is a very clear majority, and I do so declare that that passes. Okay, Article 31. Why don't everybody stand up for a moment if you wish. We've been going for an hour and a half now, so if you just want to stand up for a minute. Article 31 is the Home Rule Legislation and Bylaw Amendment Regulation of Fossil Fuel Infrastructure. Now, first, this one is slightly complicated because this article is looking, well, I'm not going to compete with that airplane. We'll wait a minute. Okay, Article 31 is doing two different things. It is passing a bylaw that currently we don't have authority to pass, contingent on home rule legislation being passed by the state legislature to pass the bylaw. And the other part of the article is seeking the home rule legislation to allow us to pass the bylaw. So it's doing two things. And I will note that you have a set of frequently asked questions that are in the meeting materials, and that the Select Board recommends affirmative action on this article. The Planning Board recommends affirmative action on this article. The Concord Municipal Light Board, the Climate Action Advisory Board, and the Comprehensive Sustainable and Energy Committee all recommend affirmative action on Article 31. Do we have a second for the motion under Article 31? I see that we do. Okay, and feel free to have a seat if you wish, and we will open the floor now for questions and comments on Article 31. Microphone number 2.
Kelly Crowley, 25 Jenny Dugan Road.
Ms. Crowley.
I wondered if someone from an affordable housing committee could explain how this article and their work would work together.
Thank you. Who would like to take that? Someone from the CHDC or Marcia? No? Liz is here. Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Rust. Will you identify yourself for us?
Sure. Hi, I'm Liz Rust, 201 Commonwealth Avenue from the Regional Housing Services Office.
Thank you very much. And we won't set a timer for you. Go ahead and just answer the question if you would.
That's okay. I have a very short response. The CHDC did talk about this article and was very supportive of the strategy that this article affords for all housing, and looks forward to working with the sponsors and private developers to make sure that their units are sustainable. The article, as proposed, has a exemption for affordable housing, and would like to think that that would not come into play for the projects being proposed.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2 again.
Phil Villers, 20 Wits End Road.
Mr. Villers.
Your house is probably like my house. It uses heating with natural gas. Some of you use oil. Unfortunately, if we continue that, we're doing our part to destroy the viability of our entire planet. So this is an important contribution from the town of Concord, if we voted, to protect ourselves, since the present heating methods which dominate Concord are unsustainable, and electric heat in one form or another, and there are several, is essential. So I urge voting for this article as part of our saving the planet and saving its climate.
Thank you, Mr. Villers. Microphone number 1.
Michael McAteer at 1615 Lowell Road in Concord.
Mr. McAteer.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Article 31 is the first step in a much larger strategic plan to address the environmental crisis that we are very much aware of. It's aligned with the governor's office, it's aligned with the state legislature, and it moves us in a direction that creates the kind of safety and well-being and a future. So I would hope that everyone here would think very carefully about this article and support it as we move into a future in a much more sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else at a microphone. It looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote. And I'll remind everyone that we're doing 2 things here. We're both passing a bylaw that has a contingency in it, in which it does not become effective until the home rule legislation. Microphone number 1, go ahead.
Thank you. Gail Heyer, 54 Nancy Road.
Ms. Howard, proceed.
Heyer.
Heyer.
Thank you.
Apologies, Ms. Heyer. Go ahead.
I'm voting no on Article 31. It is illegal under current state law. It is unnecessary because of new state law, the climate bill recently passed, and it removes a person's right to make healthy choices for her family or business. People who suffer from indoor allergies like dust and mold should avoid electric heat. Forced hot air systems like heat pumps create uncomfortable and unhealthy indoor environments for people with asthma. The Massachusetts Attorney General invalidated Brookline's similar bylaw because it violates state laws that guarantee uniform application of codes and standards for plumbing and gas utility service, and we don't have to take away personal choices to reduce fossil fuel consumption and conserve energy. I would like to see a focus on more creative ways to help the climate and conserve energy rather than taking away people's rights to make choices.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Carolyn Wilkins, 51 Hillside Avenue.
Ms. Wilkins.
Thank you. I'm going to say something as someone who's active in climate work, who cares like everybody here does about where we're going on this planet, and I also am sensitive to where our children are who are not here today. I have 2 of them. This is an important message. I appreciate the previous comment that this may not be perfect, but it is such an important message, and it's such an important opportunity for this town to send a message and show our children we're moving in the right direction and we care. I can't overstate the importance of that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Janet Miller, 1647 Main Street.
Yes, ma'am.
I am I'm a member of the CSAC committee, but I'm speaking on my own behalf. I live in a house that is solely heated by electric heat pumps, and I know it's very comfortable and effective, and I don't see any detriment. If a house is built with energy efficiency in mind, the costs are minimal. And the other thing is, without gas cooking, the air quality is much higher. Electric induction cooking is fast and efficient and great to cook on.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Paul Jameson, 419 College Road.
Mr. Jameson.
I wanted to say that my wife and I, we put in a geothermal heat pump system. Cost a lot of money to put it in, but according to my estimates, I am now paying only 1/3 of what I used to pay for a fuel oil, which was our former method of heating the house. So once you get it in, it's a big money saver.
Thanks, sir. Microphone number 2.
Shelley Amster, 44 Prairie Street. I'd like to make an observation that I share an observation. We need to educate our teachers to start arriving at school too soon to go into the building, and in the winter and the summer, warmer days, are idling their cars around the Thoreau School, and I'm probably around all these schools before they go in 15 to 20 minutes. That is polluting our air and making an addition to this problem, and building big homes more and more is the bigger problem.
Thank you. And I would ask that people keep their comments strictly pertinent to the proposed legislation. Microphone number 2.
Gregor McGregor, 70 Williams Road, Madam Moderator.
Mr. McGregor.
This is an important message to send. This is important for us to show our children and their children what Concord believes in, but I will speak to one point legally. Fortunately, we are in one of the states in the nation that is a home rule jurisdiction. There are 5 or 6 states that allow municipalities to enact their own laws, to govern their own affairs, provided they don't conflict with state laws or federal laws. This article is well within the home rule power of the Home Rule Amendment and the Home Rule Statute in Massachusetts, because this is a home rule petition that will seek the targeted approval law for Concord to enact this bylaw. This is, as the explanation in the report says, 2 for 1. This is exactly the right approach to enlist the use of home rule for this purpose.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else in a microphone, I think we are ready to go to a vote on Article 31. We need just a majority vote on this. Would all those in favor please raise their ballots? Thank you. All those opposed? That carries by well more than a majority, and I do so declare. Okay, Article 33 is the Demolition Review Bylaw Amendment. This one is a general bylaw so that it doesn't require a 2/3 vote. It is a majority vote. And you will see that the motion is to take affirmative action on Article 33 as it is printed in the warrant. And I'll remind you that you'll find the warrant in the Finance Committee report in Appendix 4. And I'm just going to tell you the page that 33 is 62. Oh, no, the Finance Committee report. It is on page 28 of the Finance Committee report, if you'd like to find the text of the amendment. And you'll see that there's a helpful narrative with questions and answers on why these amendments are being proposed that are on page 62 of the town meeting materials book. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 33, and the Historical Commission recommends affirmative action on Article 33. Do we have a second for the motion under Article 33? I see that we do. All right, we'll open the microphones now for questions and comments on Article 33. Microphone number 1.
Peter Wallace, 355 Heathbridge Road.
Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. I'm one of the 3,000 homeowners affected by this article. This article will decrease the value of my home. Many of us have our net worth tied up in our homes, and so I urge town meeting to vote no.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on Article 33? All right, I see none, so I think we're ready to go to a vote on Article 33, and again, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 33, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your ballot. Okay, that carries by a clear majority, and I do so declare. All right, we will next move to Article 38. Article 38 is a zoning bylaw amendment requiring a 2/3 vote. And it is an amendment dealing with 2-family or additional dwelling units. And you will find that the motion is to move the article as printed in the warrant, and you will find the text of the article on page 41 of the Finance Committee report. You'll see in the meeting materials on page 74 that there is a helpful map, a couple of maps that show you where this proposed bylaw amendment would have an impact. Do we have a second for the motion under Article 38? I see that we do. Okay, we'll now open the microphones for questions and comments. Microphone number 2.
Charles Phillips, 65 Fairhaven Road.
Mr. Phillips.
This article, please vote yes on Article 38. The article will enable the creation of 2-family dwellings in residential zone C. This will increase the diversity of housing options in Concord. It will enable the possibility of extended families living together, aging residents living in one unit with the income of renting the second unit, and also creating smaller and less expensive housing units than most in Concord.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 1.
Rob Comer, 106 Riverdale Road.
Yes, sir.
I recommend a no vote on Article 38. I voted wholeheartedly for the original additional dwelling unit bylaw at last year's town meeting. Unfortunately, the further changes proposed this year bring an unacceptable risk of unintended consequences. The problem is that over the past 15 years, builders have been aggressively targeting my own Residence C neighborhood with teardowns that replace much smaller, more affordable houses with speculative development of new homes that are 3 to 4 times larger than the ones they replace. If passed, Article 38 will incentivize this process, which is clearly running in opposition to Concord's sustainability goals, by increasing the potential profit of new construction following teardowns. It will result in related increases in clear cutting and resource consumption. I strongly appreciate the goals of this article, but do not agree that it will be beneficial overall, unless accompanied by strong absolute limitations on the size of any new 2-family structures.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Sue Felshen, 19 Sunnyside Lane.
Ms. Felshen.
This article will not result in larger houses because unfortunately what will happen in Zone 3 is either a small house will be torn down to build a gigantic 1-family house, or a small house will be torn down to build a gigantic house that houses 2 families. I would rather see the latter alternative. I would also like to point out that in addition to being a way to allow extra housing for people to downsize in town or for new people in town to get a foothold, this is an environmental article, because if a single very large town house with mansion is built, then the other family that can't live near a town center will end up occupying a very large house somewhere else that probably involves tearing down trees on pristine land. I remember how passionately people spoke against tearing down the trees in order to build this field we stand on many years ago. One house not only offsets trees, one large house, but also has a very high environmental footprint. So this article is good for the environmental as well as people, environment as well.
Thank you, Ms. Velschen. Microphone number 2.
Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, and I was speaking for myself. Basically, what I have is a question.
Mr. Banfield.
The two-family unit basically by right is put in the Zone C. And we also have a bylaw for floor area ratio, which is supposed to help control oversized building. I'd like someone from the planning board to please describe the interaction between the FAR bylaw and how this would work with two families going up new.
Thank you, Mr. Banfield. I see someone from the planning board approaching.
Madam Moderator, Nathan Bosdet, member of the planning board, speaking for the planning board. Just to address one thing, it is not by right, it is by special permit. And also, as far as the development or the tearing down of smaller homes for two families, I mean, we can't speak to that directly. They could already be torn down by right to build a single family, as Ms. Velschen mentioned earlier. This bylaw is meant to, move the town forward in terms of our goals for, aging in place, focusing home developments in and around cultural centers and transportation hubs, and we think that this will help to get that goal. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
You headed to the microphone there, sir. Microphone number 2.
Joe Lauren, 134 Southfield Road.
All right, I think you're very tall. You're going to need to get a little closer to that guy.
There we go.
Thank you.
Better?
Better.
So I won't necessarily argue with the intent and objectives of this, that we want to have more affordable housing in Concord and the other things, objectives and goals of this. But I do think that we should think about this more broadly across the town of Concord instead of focusing only on Zone C. I think it unfairly targets Zone C, and we frankly have lots of people who don't live there who could vote for something that could significantly change our neighborhood. I think if we believe this is important, we should make it town-wide or not at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Hi, my name is Patricia Tui. My address,
Get a little closer.
address is 93 Pilgrim Road.
Yes,
And
please proceed.
I'm recommending a no vote on this amendment because
I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you. Can you maybe...
I'm recommending a no vote on this. I don't think that we have enough information to be able to vote for it. I would really like to see some studies done on the expected number of units and what the impact of those will be on the infrastructure in the locations that it's proposed. I would agree with the previous gentleman that if truly our goals were to increase the supply of housing in the town of Concord, that this should be a town-wide thing that is a burden that is borne by all the residents of Concord and not just the residents in a very small area of town. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Matt Johnson, member of the Select Board and a former member of the Planning Board, but speaking on my own behalf.
Great, we need your address, sorry.
And I'm at 21 Winthrop Street.
Thank you.
So, first of all, to ask the question or answer the question about Residence C and the floor area ratio bylaw, the quarter-acre nominal size of the Residence C district effectively limits the building size. So that's where the two families could be really constrained within Residence C and not become outsized. Okay, and then the second question about why not extend to all of the town, or Residence B at least, there is no really effective limit on size there. And so we could create double McMansions in that case. And then the third issue is about other towns, and they have these bylaws in place, and they're not thousands of two families being created. So we have seen that there's a modest but effective increase in affordable, right-sized housing that can be created through this mechanism, but we need to be careful. And we started at Residence C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Microphone number 1.
This is Frank Wilczek, 292 Sudbury Road.
Yes, sir.
I have a lot of sympathy for the general tenor of this proposal to increase the diversity of housing and make it more affordable, but I think this proposal is extremely poorly thought out. There are very general and vague indications of the limitations on housing and parking that I don't think will stand up against the pressure of developers. The neighborhoods involved are quite small. They already have significant pressure on their parking, and I think they will be degraded by this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Jane Blumberg, 36 Lowell Road. We live in the area that would be affected by this, and I'm very excited about this, and I hope people vote for it. I've been to some of the meetings over the last year or so where this was being discussed, and I think the concerns about parking and so forth have been raised and talked about. And secondly, I would just say I've been involved with issues of housing, affordable housing, for 15 years. And one of the appealing aspects of this article is that it's near, as was mentioned, transportation and shopping and so forth, unlike some of the areas of town that would be harder for people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 1 again.
Hi, Matt Davenport, 16 Riverdale Circle.
Mr. Davenport, why don't you pull that microphone up just a little bit there? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm urging a no on this vote. I appreciate the intention, as been mentioned earlier. I'm all for bringing more affordable and diverse housing to Concord. I am a little taken aback by isolating this just to Residence Zone C. There were comments by Mr. Johnson about how other towns are doing things. While that is fantastic to hear, the way that this is written, there are no limitations. There's nothing, and as we just mentioned, there's a lot of vagueness in the wording. So there's no limitations to keep things from getting out of hand. We can do things responsibly, but it's not spelled out how that's actually going to happen. There's just a lot of information that's missing, I think, in order for this town as an entirety to vote on an issue that affects a small portion.
Thank you, sir. Microphone number 1, as soon as that plane passes, just give it a second there. I think you're good, microphone number
Okay.
1, and you can pull that down a little bit to be closer to you.
Okay, I'm Dorothy Lux, 58 Southfield Road, and
Yes,
I take
ma'am.
issue with the idea that the developers would tear down one house and put up two duplexes.
Hold on just a minute, ma'am. Can folks hear the speaker at microphone number 1? No. Try and
Okay.
pull that down a little more. I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Dorothy Lux, 58 Southfield Road.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. I find it, I take an issue with this when one mentions that the one house will be torn down and a duplex will be put up. In my opinion, any duplex will be as expensive, only it will be, each side will be almost the cost of the whole house. Therefore, I don't think we're meeting any needs for any moderate income people. I also take issue, again, as the previous people said, with it being limited to Section C. I would think, number one, that if you really are wanting lower, moderate income people that go to work every day, they need access to Route 2. Access to Route 2 goes all the way up to Route 2, not just one tiny section on Southfield Road, Riverdale, whatever it is. The other thing is if you multiply the people living in these areas, access to Route 2 is now a bottleneck. It is already a bottleneck in many instances. The Sudbury Road exit is frequently difficult to manage. And by putting more people there, the same thing. Also, with saying that it must be near to shopping, moderate income people do not generally shop, I'm sorry to say, I don't think they are, at Crosby's Market or the Concord Market. Those people go to Market Basket. We don't have that kind of facility here. We don't have a shopping store that they would want to go to.
Ma'am,
So-
I'm afraid you're out
Time
of
is up.
time.
I vote no.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Bridget Neal, 241 Prairie Street.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Moderator. I live in the C district that's affected, and I'm strongly in favor of this article. I think it's a wonderful first step in the direction of creating more housing and potentially more affordable housing. These things are never going to be perfect. We have to take steps in this direction. A previous speaker made a comment about no restrictions whatsoever being placed on this, but the fact that there is a special permit process is already a big restriction. So there will be some oversight before granting these permits. And I think this is wonderful. I think we need more dense housing throughout Concord, and this is an excellent first step. I'm voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brooks Ware, 277 Deacon Haynes Road.
Mr. Ware?
I'd like to support a yes vote for this measure. By way of my own thinking on this, if you look at Concord's historic stock of homes that were originally built as two-family or ADU, measures from last year, the ability to put up these kinds of homes within a PRD, all are ways that this type of housing can currently be produced. The only way it can't be is new. I echo the comments of a few other speakers about the special permit process, making sure that this is done in a thoughtful way, and also to address some of the concerns voiced already. These are addressed very well by the Envision Concord study and smart growth principles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
Sarah Wilbur, 18 Concord Green.
Yes,
I call the question.
Okay. This is I actually, oh, there are more people in the microphone. Okay, so this is, we've been working on this for a while, so this is an appropriate motion. It's non-debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of proceeding directly to a vote now, please raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed, that carries by a clear 2/3 majority, and I do so declare. We'll now proceed to a vote under Article 38, the zoning bylaw amendment for two-family or additional dwelling unit. And again, this requires a 2/3 vote because it is a zoning bylaw amendment. Would all those in favor of the bylaw please raise your ballots? Thank you. Would all those opposed please raise your ballots? Okay, that carries by 2/3, and I do so declare. I have been asked by Chief Judge to remind you all that it's hot out and that you should stay hydrated. I think they're here to help, but they'd rather not have to. So please do stay hydrated, and I want to remind folks that there is some boxed water if you've run out of your own, and if you did bring a water bottle and you've already drunk your full water bottle, right here by the restrooms, there is a drinking water fill-up pipe that is operational, and I am assured by facilities has a brand new filter in it. So you're welcome to refill your water bottle over there. Hi. Okay. We're now going to proceed to Article 39, which we took off of the consent calendar. This is the zoning bylaw amendment for the earth removal bylaw. This one is the motion here is to take affirmative action on Article 39 as printed in the warrant. You will find on page 42 of the Finance Committee report the text of the article. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but this does require a 2/3 vote. Affirmative action is recommended by the Select Board and the Planning Board. And do we have a second for this motion? I see that we do. We'll open microphones for questions and comments on Article 39. Microphone number 1.
Thank you. Cynthia Katz, 20 Conan Street.
Ms. Katz.
Thank you. I think this is a great first step, but I have a question for the planning board, maybe. And it's why there wouldn't be a limit to the total earth removal, or what is it called when you put something back? Phil, thank you. Takes a town meeting. So I wonder about that as we think about a particular special permit that's before us, another particular thing that happened in town without a permit. And I also want to just shed light on what's already come up about things are not by right, but they're by special permit. My hope is that the Zoning Board of Appeals will begin to uphold our zoning bylaws more frequently, because our zoning bylaws are only as good as them being upheld. So thank you.
Thank you. Would someone from the Planning Board like to address the question? Just a moment and we'll have an answer.
Hi, Haley Orvidal speaking on behalf of the Planning Board, 76 Upland.
Hold on one second. Can you pull that microphone down a little more so we can hear you? And tell us your
Sure.
name and address again.
Haley Orvidal, 76 Upland.
Thank you.
So as far as putting an absolute restriction on the total amount of earth removal, we honestly can't say that we know that we have an ability to do that. A lot of our recommendations were based on precedent from other towns, and that's just not something that we saw in any other earth removal bylaw. But the idea was to add, more clear criteria for evaluation, so that if under that review process it was found that the amount of earth removal was unnecessary or unsustainable, then that the zoning board would have the ability to say so. So that was the reasoning for not including in just a fixed total amount that you couldn't go over. Did I answer everything?
If not, the voter will let us know. Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Gregor McGregor, 70 Williams Road, Madam Moderator.
Mr. McGregor.
I urge a yes vote. Sometimes bylaws on the books, zoning and non-zoning, or general bylaws as they're called, get improved chink by chink, amendment by amendment, every so often in town meeting. This is an example of a modest improvement that fits within these precedents of what the Attorney General has approved before. We towns should look to the Attorney General if we want our bylaws to go through smooth sailing to approval, and this is a good one. At a later time, we can decide how are we going to keep our landscapes and our land contours and the earth that the glacier left, so important to carbon sequestration, and which, I'm sorry to say, developers will propose to move up to any limit. And if there's no limit, then you'll end up with a landscape leveled instead of contoured like Concord is.
Thank you very much. All right, I don't see anyone else at a microphone. I believe we are ready for a vote on Article 39, the zoning bylaw amendment on earth removal. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise their ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? I don't see anybody opposed. That clear. There is somebody opposed. Okay, thank you very much. So it's not unanimous, but it's clearly beyond 2/3, and I do so declare. So that passes. All right, we'll now proceed to Article 40. This is the petition on the prohibition of neonicotinoids on new leases on town land. This is the use of neonicotinoids. And you will find the information on this article on page 77 of the materials. There is a helpful narrative there. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 40. The Agriculture Committee recommends no action on Article 40, and you will find on pages 77 and 78 the recommendations of those two respective committees, one for and one against. The motion is to take affirmative action on Article 40 as printed in the warrant, and in the Finance Committee, you'll find the language on page 45. Do we have a second for this motion? I see that we do. Thank you very much. And we'll now open the microphones for questions and comments. I see a jogger approaching microphone number 2. Good for you in this weather, sir.
Rob Elkon, 82 Shadyside Avenue.
Mr.
As a
O'Connor.
new Concord resident, but a longtime beekeeper, I highly support this. There's been numerous studies significant showing that the colony collapse is linked to the use of neonicotinoids. So I'd like to see this cut back, because as a beekeeper who's seen a strict upkeep in his beekeeping die-offs, this would be a big improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't see up. Here we go. Microphone number 2.
Regina Ryder, 96 The Valley Road.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Moderator, I have actually a question why this would be just for newly developed agricultural land. And maybe Mark Hansen could elaborate on that.
Mr. Hansen?
Hi, Mark Hansen, 340 Holdenwood Road.
Oh, hold on, Mr. Hansen. You need to pull that microphone up a little bit. We can't
Okay.
quite hear you.
Mark Hansen, 340 Holdenwood Road. Is that good?
Better, thank you.
The reason we restricted this to new leases was just a decision made by the Pollinator Advisory Committee last year, prior to last year's town meeting, that we honor existing leases. It's an open question. I mean, obviously, if we took more neonics out of the environment than this does, we would have more benefit. But this is a start, a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Good afternoon. Ron Bernard, 83 Wright Road.
Mr. Bernardi.
I would like to hear from the Agricultural Committee on their reasons for voting no action, please.
Okay, do we have someone from the Agriculture Committee who is prepared to speak on their recommendation? Mr. Barrow. Okay. Microphone number 1, please.
Stephen Verrill, 415 Plainfield Road.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow.
There are a number of thoughts went into this on the Agriculture Committee. One is that the Massachusetts Pesticide Board, which regulates restricted chemicals across the state, has voted to make all neonicotinoids restricted chemicals where they had not previously been. And in areas like Concord, most of the use was by homeowners and landscapers. One of the popular uses has been to protect hemlock trees against the woolly beetle. And the method of doing that was to broadcast the ingredient on the ground around the base of the tree in such quantity that it would circulate down into the ground and be taken up by the roots to the top of the tree in quantity to protect the tree for 6 years or more. And that meant that all of the plants and flowers growing around the tree would carry that. That has been restricted now. A landscaper cannot use it on your property without permission from the landowner and acknowledgement that that's what he's doing. One of the biggest uses in agriculture is on seed treatment, and that is probably in effect in many of your own gardens. If you've ever bought any seed that is off color with a green coating or a pink or a red or some other unnatural coating, the chances are that that contains a minimal amount of neonics. And these are on the seed nowadays in such quantity as to protect the germinating seed and the emerging plant, and then it's pretty much used up and dissipated. There have been accurate stories of serious seed application problems from a number of years ago when the whole process of treating seed with bags of powder and using a different kind of seeder, a totally different process than there is now. And currently, there's no protection on the plants more than a few inches above ground, and certainly it's dissipated before bloom and danger to the bees, but it does help in germination. I guess that's it. In the small quantities, it's a good thing, and big quantities, it's not. And most of the agriculture use is in small quantities.
Thank you, Mr. Verrill. Microphone number 2.
Virginia Hines, 74 The Valley Road.
Ms. Hines.
So I'd like to thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you, Mr. Hansen, for bringing this article. I'm going to vote yes. This article had me at a bird dies if it eats a tree seed. Thank you.
Okay, I see a jogger approaching microphone 1. Microphone number 1.
Carolyn King, 169 Heathbridge Road. I just
Proceed.
wanted to speak in favor. This is a very modest amount of acreage. Of Concord's, I believe, something like 1,200 acres for agricultural use. This is less than 100. And I believe also the state law will regulate over-the-counter sales of neonics, but not commercial and agricultural. And I believe this is a very respectful effort to begin to raise profile on this while honoring the local agricultural methods of farming and not asking anybody to change too quickly.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green, Unit 4.
Ms. Dritt.
What an echo. I know it's hard to require our local farmers to change their ways, but the science is clear. In areas of Europe where they banned neonicotinoid pesticides, their bees and pollinators came back. The state board only requires notification, and how many people read the notifications when they have to? I've lived in Concord since the early 90s, and when I moved here, the clovers were full of bees, the trees full of buzzing pollinators. And last month, I walked down Main Street in West Concord and stopped under a gorgeous flowering tree that smelled heavenly. And I realized there was not one buzz. Please vote in favor.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else at a microphone. I think we are ready to proceed to a vote on Article 40. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 40, please raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Well, that carries by a clear majority, and I do so declare. Okay, the last article that we will take up is Article 41, and this is the citizen petition for the appointment of a fiber and broadband study committee. The whole motion, you'll see, is printed out on page 79 of the materials. There are a couple of minor changes to the motion under the article that change the appointing authority to appoint the board from the town manager to the select board. In subsection A of the article suggest that it should be service on the remaining 5% of town streets as opposed to property that lacks such service. So this is the appointment of a committee to study the expansion of fiber and broadband service within town and to make recommendations on it. There's a narrative on page 79, and the select board recommends no action on the article. The light board recommends no action on the article. The PEG Access Advisory Committee recommends affirmative action on the article. And all of those recommendations, the light board recommendation is not explained in the materials, but the select board and the PEG Access Committee recommendations are on page 80. Do we have a second for the motion under this article? I see that we do. And we'll open the microphones now for questions and comments. Microphone number 1.
My name is Alice Kaufman.
Okay, wait, hold on. Get a little closer to that microphone, Ms. Kaufman.
Let's get that up a little higher. There we go. My name is Alice Kaufman. I live at 1615 Lowell Road.
Ms. Kaufman.
I'm chair of the Light Board and speaking for the board. So the Concord Municipal Light Board recommends no action on Article 41, and we felt it important to state the reasoning behind this vote. The board supports the goals of the petition to provide broadband service to our community as quickly and effectively as is reasonably possible. We thank the petitioners for shining light on this town priority and identifying the need for a more focused attention by the town manager, the select board, the light board, and light plant management to understand the costs, barriers, and opportunities to expanding broadband access. The past 15 months have been trying, and broadband installations have been delayed. However, a director of telecommunications and a chief information officer have recently been hired, both of whom play a significant role in directing the town's broadband long-term strategy. It has been the long tradition in town to seat citizen volunteer committees to deal with issues of specific and townwide interest. The board felt that a broadband business strategy would best be addressed by senior management staff with assistance from independent telecom and IT consultants if needed, and in consultation with the community. Going forward, broadband will be on the agenda for every board meeting, and we encourage interested residents to join us to share your thoughts on the town's service. In light of these considerations, the CMLP board recommends no article on Article 41.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Microphone number 2.
Thank you. Carlin Reed. I'm the chair of the PEG Access Committee, explaining our information. Address is 83 Wits End, Concord.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Proceed.
Thank you. Broadband is an essential service, as we have seen during this COVID experience. Yet not all of our citizens are able to get the town's broadband service because of various barriers. The new committee will explore the barriers to broadband adoption in a targeted, focused effort. This committee will provide the Light Board, the Select Board, and the town manager with information needed to form rational policy decisions on laying fiber to homes and businesses in Concord. Our PEG Access Committee recommends a yes vote on Article 41 because Concord residents and businesses deserve access to fiber-based broadband. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Microphone number 1.
Peggy Wargelin, 97 Hillside Avenue.
Yes, please proceed.
Madam Moderator, I was a member
Wait, I'm going to ask you to get a little closer to that microphone.
Sure. I was a member of the PEG Access Committee until last year. And one of the things I noticed is that our town has a huge amount of technical expertise that people are willing to volunteer. So I see this committee as an opportunity for people with expertise to apply that and document it and provide it as useful information for the town employees working on it. And I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
I'm Mark Howell, 668 Nersnack Hill Road, and former Town of Concord CIO and manager for the Concord Light Broadband Service.
Mr.
Speaking
Howell.
for myself.
Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Creating a citizens committee to recommend approaches for the expansion of the fiber network is both timely and necessary. The system has reached a state of maturity where new goals and plans can be and should be established. Progress on the broadband network has faltered in the last year. Staffing shortages and the pandemic have slowed growth even as demand for service grew. The staff will be hard-pressed just to address the backlog within a year. The difficult reality is that planning is likely to be postponed. That means no solutions are forthcoming for the over 20% of households who are not able to be served yet. This committee would not replace or interfere with the Light Board's responsibilities. Instead, it would generate options and identify priorities they do not currently have time to gather. Thanks for your support for Article 41.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Galis, 62 Prescott Road. I strongly support this article. I think that a committee of independent citizens can look at this creatively, comprehensively, kind of help create a vision that complements what the staff is doing. The idea of not providing this vital service to everyone in town, I think it's a matter of equity. We've seen how important it is to be able to connect remotely. So much access to government information, education, et cetera, is now run through the internet, and this really should be available to everybody. I fully respect all the work that the light plant and the town administration has done and it is doing, but there's still that last mile, so to speak, to bring everybody the great benefits. And it may require creative funding, creative ways of doing this that would not fit into the standard business models that I'm sure for responsibility the light plant has had to kind of restrict itself to so
Thank
far.
you, Mr. Galis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Scott Hopkinson, 67 Indian Spring Road, member of the PEG Access Committee, previous chair of the PEG Access Committee, speaking as an individual.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I want to mention that I was one of the co-authors of the original plan here that we put in place back in 2014. It was very carefully modeled, and I'm very happy that the team that's running this thing has made it very successful to this date. I think it's ironic that we're standing on a football field. The way we look at this is it's time for replanning for the next step in the progress of this broadband as it expands. I know many of you folks have been spending a lot of time in front of web meetings, as I have for the last 15 months, and having that broadband availability has been wonderful. What we're asking to do is provide our expertise at no cost to the town, with no binding on the town, but rather just lend our insight and allow the town to appreciate or possibly look at different ways to solve a variety of both social and technical problems associated with the broadband. So for that, I am advocating a yes vote on the article. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Microphone number 3.
Hello, Brian Folds, 33 Riverdale Road. I'm a member of the Light Board, but I'm speaking on my own behalf.
Mr. Folds.
This broadband has been wonderful for the town. We've done a lot of growth, word of mouth, slow, the pandemic aside, the business has been building. I think it's time that there is some input from the citizens, and I believe the Light Board is too busy with their core business to get into the weeds on broadband. And I think it would be good to get this advisory group to advise on that business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green.
Yes, proceed.
The town fiber optic system is a
Wait,
huge...
hold on one second. I can't quite hear you. Can you drop that microphone a little bit? There you go.
That better?
That is better.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green.
Yes, Ms. Dritt.
This fiber optic system is a wonderful asset to the town of Concord, to both businesses and citizens alike. We get to upload things at higher speeds than you can other way. It was apparently originated by several far-seeing citizen committees. And I think it's time, without which we wouldn't have it today. And I agree with the speakers in favor of this. I think it's absolutely wonderful opportunity that these experts are willing to give our town, we should certainly take them up on it.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I urge a yes
Wait,
vote.
hold on. I need your name and address.
Oh, sorry. Virginia Hines, 74 The Valley Road.
Yes, Ms. Hines.
So it's been my experience over the past 25 years that citizens have the opportunity to go deep into various issues. The boards, and they're wonderful, have so much on their plate. They have to come up to speed quickly, and I see this as an opportunity to work in harmony with the various boards. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Allen en route to a microphone. Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. David Allen, 316 Eastbridge Road.
Mr. Allen.
Let me offer just a bit of perspective from the guilty party, stretching back about a quarter of a century now, the start of this whole Concord broadband enterprise. As a prior speaker mentioned, there were prior committees, blue ribbon committees. I see us after as, and thank you so much, Mark Howell and his team for a remarkable job. I see us at a nodal point. Once again, we can take advantage of some citizen input. There are large amounts of money to be spent to make this happen. I think we hear a consensus at these microphones. I hope we'll vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more voice. Microphone number 2.
Eric Van Loon, Martha's Point Road. Madam Moderator, I call the question.
Okay, well, Mr. Van Loon, I don't actually see anyone else at a microphone, so I think we're good to go to a vote. We need a majority vote on this article. And the motion is to move the article as printed in the meeting materials. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Thank you very much. That motion carries by a majority. This brings our business at this annual town meeting to a close. I am ready for a motion to dissolve the meeting. I see we have that motion. Do we have a second? We do. Oh, wait, I have Ms. Escobedo has a word for us.
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
If we could, before we adjourn, if we could thank you and everyone who made this meeting possible.
Thank you, Ms. Escobedo. Thank you very much. All right, so we have a motion to dissolve. All those in favor? Oh. Anybody opposed? Anybody want to stay here? Okay, all right, I think we're good. I want to remind everyone, please, to fill out your town meeting survey. There is a box on the table by the exit over there where you can put it, or you can drop it off or put it in the mail. And if you like having this meeting outside, you can write me that on the back of the card. Thank you all.